So when you're setting up to get ready to do your stop animation, the first thing you need to do is you need to find a tripod or something stable so that your camera doesn't move, because stop animation is created when you slowly move things. So if you do not have a tripod that'll hold your camera, there are a couple of things you can jerry-rig at home. One of which is this setup. I'm gonna back it up so you can kind of see what it is. It is literally a piece of glass on two chairs. What'll work for that is you can take the glass out of a picture and just put it between two chairs and then set it up that way. Another thing that you can do, which I have done and I've set up over here for our example, if you have one of these little arms, you can use that. This is going to be my tripod to film today. I also created, I just have a bench pin right here, and I just kind of used it as a vise with my iPad. Another thing you can do, which is really simple, is this. You can literally, you take a spoon and you take a jar and you can kind of anchor your phone to the spoon. Let me see if you can see this. Phone, anchored, anchored, anchored. And you can put it here. And what's nice about this is that it'll stay in one spot. And then you can start to film. And if you need to, you can make, like if you're gonna use this, make sure you use tape to mark the spot where your jar is gonna be centered so it doesn't move while you are filming. You can also, if you're using a vise or something, you can put marks on the iPad. All right, so this is how this works. Let me start with this. The first thing you want to do is you want to go to the stop animation icon. You're going to open it up. Open up the app. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to New Movie. You're going to hit New Movie. And what'll happen is it'll open up. Now, some of this stuff is really simple. So what's gonna happen is you want to make sure you've set up your space. You should theoretically already have your storyboard, so you know what scenes you want to film. You'll know what kind of background you need if you want it. So the first thing you're gonna do is, let's talk about the easy stuff. So this red button is how you take pictures, which I'm sure you probably already figured out. So what happens is you will move your character into frame, maybe just a little bit. You'll hit take the picture, and then you can move it a little more, take the picture. So one of the things you want to make sure is you want to make sure that your camera is sturdy, because if you shake it like this, you'll end up with blurry pictures. So there's a couple of things that you can do to make sure that it doesn't get blurry. One is there is a timer button, this little one here. Now you click it. What happens is it gives you an option to take a picture like every 5 seconds. So what's interesting, we can do this, is we can go to like every 5 seconds. Then I'm gonna hit done, and then what you'll notice is like a little timer gauge goes around the shutter button. So what happens is we go like this, click. Now every 5 seconds, it's automatically gonna take another picture. And then I'm gonna move it. And I can move it again. Now I can change the setting to make it as quick or as slow as I want. But what's nice about this is instead of having to go back and keep hitting the button, it will automatically just kind of keep taking those pictures. So if I know that I have a whole sequence where things are gonna just kind of move straight along and I don't have to worry about changing my camera angles, this is a really good time. Really good feature to use. Okay, so let's say I'm done with that. Now, if you hit the button again, it'll stop it and it'll stop taking all of its pictures. Now you can go back to here and you can tell it to back to off, and then hit done, and then I'm back to taking one picture at a time. Now, another thing you can do, and it is actually I don't know if it's available on Android, but I know on iPhone, if you have the headphones like this that came with the phone, if you plug it in, it'll also work with the other kinds. The important thing is this. If you plug this in, what happens is you'll notice when I hit the plus button, it takes a photo. And so if you're worried about moving the camera because it's kind of precarious, if you plug in your headphones, you can take photos with sort of like having a remote control shutter. Like that. So that is pretty great. Okay, so something else that I'm sure you might have noticed is there's a feature called onion skin. Now, if you look at this little wheel here, what happens is this basically what happens is it goes back and forth. It creates onion skin. You know how onion skin is sort of translucent seeming? So what happens is if we move this scroll a little bit halfway between the middle and up there, it kind of shows you the ghost of the image you just took. So when I move things, you'll see on the picture, I can see where it was and where it's moving to. So when I take the picture, I'll know like how much movement has occurred. So this works really well if I'm trying to create like distance across the page. So the other things that we want to think about are this. We have here this little wheel. It'll be in a different spot on yours, but it'll still have this wheel. This wheel is sort of like your settings. Now, for your settings, the first thing you're going to want is this little timer. So what they're going to ask you is they're going to ask, basically you want to decide how many frames per second. So the more frames per second, the faster things are going to happen. You want to set your timer to around to 10. You don't want to go any lower than 8. 12 is what the professionals use, so we're going to do 10. So the other buttons, which you don't really have to worry about, but I'll show you anyway, this has to do with like fades. Like if you wanted it to start with a fade in, this is where you'd find that button. This is, you know, the aspect ratio. This is sort of like if you knew you were going to film this for, say, your Instagram, it is a square photo. So this is how you kind of change what the you know, like the picture is going to look like. Okay, so this is basically, we're going to film in HD. It should automatically kind of be set to that. So that is good. Now the other thing that I want to show you is this right here. This little button here is, there's something called the rule of thirds. And the rule of thirds, when you push it, this little grid comes up. So the rule of thirds says that things are more interesting when the action occurs in the like one of these intersections of the rule of thirds. So if you're trying to make the image look a little more interesting, the best thing to do is to turn this on because it'll help you make sure that you're kind of like centered in your page. This is the settings button, this guy right here. There are different settings. So on the camera settings, if you wanted to do a green screen, I'm just going to show you, you have to pay for it. If you were going to film everything on a green screen, what ends up happening is you can change it later. But it'll cost you 99 cents, so I'm not requiring you to do any of this. Like I said, if you want to play with the features, you can, but I'm not requiring it. So go back to there. Right here, the M, this is about like the mode. So we have a couple of ways. This is autofocus. So autofocus is nice because it constantly is refocusing things. Now this one is tap and set. So what this is really good for is that let's say you know that you're going to be reaching in here and changing things. Now if I get closer, what happens is the iPad or the iPhone will automatically try to focus on the thing that's in the foreground. So sometimes you can end up with blurry images. So sometimes it's best to get it to like focus on your creature and then you're locking it here because I like that everything's focused, so I'm going to hit done, and now everything is locked in focus at this point right here. This is not a great feature for you. If your objects are going to move forward and backwards, you might want to just leave it on. I'm going to go back to it so you can see it. Like if it's on autofocus, it'll automatically keep refocusing itself. Now, This is, you can manually like set the focus and aperture and then lock it in. And then this is like basically manually setting everything. I wouldn't worry about the manual stuff. You might want to stick with either autofocus or the auto lock, where once you get it focused, you kind of keep it there. Basically, in terms of lighting, what you want to go for is you want even lighting. So if you are working in your room and it's really dark, you might want like 2 desk lamps pointing at something. If you're working outside, totally fine, but just be aware that light changes, so you'll have weird shadows when you're working. This is about focusing. If you're going to do autofocus, this has to do with lens reflexes. Some of this stuff you don't have to worry about. Your shutter speed, none of this really matters. The shutter speed, that might change. Let's say you were trying to make, like you were doing a dark kind of Batman sequence and you wanted dark lighting. Well, a larger shutter speed would stay open longer so that you could capture that dark setting. But if you're going to do something like that where there's going to be a long shutter speed, you really want to make sure you're either using a timer or the little headphone remote to take the pictures. And okay, so this has to do with, you could like flip things around if you wanted to, like mirror image. So if you were trying to make something look crazy where like, you know, like a creature's going back and forth or something mystical is happening, this is a fun it's a fun thing. And this lets you flip it upside down. You get it. All right, so with all that in mind, so let's say I'm continuing to take my pictures. And taking my pictures. And I make this mistake, right? I'm doing this and I take the picture and right? I'm looking at the pictures I already took, and what happens is, hold on. Beep. You can see I had my, hold on, stop it. So if you look here, there's a play button. If you hit play, it'll show you what exactly was happening. Now you see how that last frame, all of a sudden my hand pops in there? So if I wanted to fix that, what I would do is, you can go bloop. I can click on the picture that had my hand in it, and then I can hit delete. So let's say you wanted to do a whole series where you had, you know, a big zoom out part where they're walking across, and then you wanted to do a zoom in part where you had like 2 characters talking to each other. So what you would do is you could film them all, and then let's say I wanted to, I can kind of cut and copy a picture and move it someplace else. So, you know, like if I did this whole series of things and then afterwards I filmed like 2 characters talking, I could cut that part and then I could stick it somewhere else. So let me cut this and then I'll move it up here and I can paste it. So when I hit play, it's going to be all messed up now because I did it weird. But you can cut and paste stuff. So you have this opportunity to kind of move things around. So you could film all the far away stuff and then you can zoom in if you want to make it closer up. Okay, I feel like that is all for now.